All right, here we are, Jones East, hole number 1. We got a Mando tree right there, the big one on the right. Usually for me, what I'm throwing is a mid-range. I throw my truth down the middle. A lot of people be throwing forehands. The only real danger is the course divider line on the left that plays between 1 and 18, and of course the road long. Hole number 2 is going to be a must birdie hole for most players. A lot of people are just going to take this nice, easy hyzer line that I'm throwing with my Biofusion Felon and just letting it hyzer up. There's not a whole lot of danger. There's nothing out to the left. So this is going to be one of those holes that you're going to want to get your birdie on. Then we got moving on to hole number 3. After one of the easier par 3s, we're playing one of the easier par 4s. The only real danger here is that building you see right in the middle. Getting pinned behind it is never a lot of fun. The ideal shot for me is throw something up over the top and let it finish off to the left. And you have a pretty wide open approach. Not a whole lot of OB on this hole. The road long, and there's a pavilion off to the right, but most people are probably going to be getting a birdie 3 on hole number 3. On to hole 4. It plays 536 feet. It is a very difficult shot. For me, if the wind is right, I like to throw this big anhyzer stall shot up and over. Just try and take the trees completely out of play. The water line, of course, is OB. The road you can see in the distance is OB. It's pretty difficult shot to land. If you come up a little bit short, the approach is going to be a little more difficult, but here in this shot, I had an excellent drive, probably one of the better drives I've ever had on the hole, so kind of made for a really easy birdie for me on this one. Hole number 5, there's a couple different ways to play the hole. As you can see in the description down on the right, there's a OB patch of grass, safe grass, and then another patch of OB. It's a par 4 as well, playing 420 feet. Usually where you see the orange is going to be all tall grass, but the city went ahead and burned it, so it's nice and lush for the events. And so that's going to be all OB, and as you could tell, the basket sits about 28 feet from the OB, and about 28 feet long is the road, with the trees on the right-hand side also being OB, being a course divider. Hole 6 is probably ranks up there with one of the more difficult par 4s. I like to throw a crazy little roller shot on this hole up the hill. That, if I miss that tree, I've got a pretty good look at my potential eagle, actually. The only real trouble is OB tall grass on the left and the course divider on the right. Pretty difficult green. It slopes downward toward the back side of it, and it's typically tall grass back there, as you can tell from the little image in the corner there. It's pretty difficult par 4. A lot of people are be getting 3s or 4s on this hole. Hole number 7, for the 4th par 4 in a row. You right-handed players are going to want to throw. I typically like to throw right at that flag and get it to hyzer out just in front and land in between the OB parking lot and the tree line, right in this area here that you can see. On this particular shot, I hyzered off a little too much and ended up in the trees, but was lucky enough to have a pretty open line at the basket. The basket does sit on somewhat of an island around tall grass, and those 3 big cedar trees you see in front of you are the 3 trees that you're going to want to either, throw into them is typically what I do, and fall down. Then it gives you 20 to 30 foot putt to save, or for your eagle rather. Pretty difficult hole, not overly hard if you play the hole the way it's supposed to be played, which is basically 2 big hyzers. Just stay away from the OB grass on the left and the parking lot on the right. Hole number 8 is probably one of my favorite holes. It is 370 feet downhill, and all the dirt you see will be tall grass. It's OB. The trouble on this hole is long, and left is a road. I'm throwing a mid-range, throwing my truth if there's not a whole lot of wind. I believe this day we had some tailwinds, so I felt really confident throwing the mid-range down the hill. The only trouble, as I said, is really the road. The tall grass shouldn't come into play for most players. Hole 9 is 726 feet. It's the most difficult par 4 in my opinion. Usually I'm throwing a mid-range down the middle. Today we had a little bit more wind, so I went ahead and clubbed up to a driver and threw my enforcer down. The creek line you see long is OB. The road left is all OB, and the pond long is also OB. So it makes for more of a placement shot. So you want to throw 2 perfectly good place shots in order to get your birdie. And this is the creek line right here. That is OB. And anything long into that is OB. The road short is OB. So there's a whole lot of OB here on hole number 9. Moving on to hole number 10. We've got 340 feet downhill. Nice gap to throw into. Pretty easy hole, I would say, for most players. I'm going to be throwing a mid-range off the tee. Another true shot for me. Not a whole lot of OB. The only real OB on the hole is the pond directly in front of you. And as long as you don't hit a tree and kick backwards into the pond, you should not find any OB on this hole. Hole number 11, you may have seen on ESPN last year with Billy Engel hitting the ace and being featured on SportsCenter. Pretty cool hole, downhill. There's a pond in between you and the basket. There's a road long, a pavilion on the right side that is all OB. So it plays about 395 feet. Usually I will throw a fairway driver out there, and finish anywhere on the left side is fine, just to give myself a putt. The only true obstacle is the tree there, just left of the basket. And before you cross the pond, there is a mando tree that you need to keep left of. Hole number 12 is our signature elevated basket hole. This is a really fun shot. It's downhill for the most part, 320 feet, pretty easy mid-range shot. 2 trees in the way, pond short. Pond is probably 120 feet short of the pin, rather 120 feet from the pond's edge to the basket. It's pretty easy hole, really. The only thing that can really become a factor on this hole is the wind, putting on this elevated basket. Okay, hole number 13. You're going to want to play a slight hyzer shot on this hole and get it to skip down left. The creek line on the left side is OB. The tree line is not OB. And there's a property line off to the right that is OB. On this particular shot, I didn't quite get the distance left that I needed. So now I'm forced to throw either a layup shot or a very difficult stall and hyzer shot over the top of the trees here. And the basket sits up to the right, and this is a par 4, and basically you just want to throw a nice stable shot down to the left, not crossing the OB creek on the left side, and leave yourself a nice open shot through the gap there. The only other trouble on the green would be the road, slightly long. It really doesn't come into play a whole lot unless you don't get yourself far enough left and you're forced to throw that big over-the-top shot, then you could possibly find the road. Hole number 14 is 420 feet. It plays slightly uphill, pretty difficult hole. The pond is long, and there's an OB line all down the left side, fairway divider. This one is one I have to throw at about 80% power to get up there. It's a pretty good birdie if you get it. It's probably, I would almost consider it a bonus birdie to get this hole, with the pond being OB long and the creek on the left side as well. The basket sits about 25 feet from the water's edge, sloping downhill. So if you come up short and you have to try to hit a putt, there's a good chance you're gonna, bounce off or roll right into the water. All right, hole 15. We got 351 feet. There's a few options on this hole. If you have a forehand, it really works well to play a forehand down the road. Most of you know I don't have that great of a forehand, so I choose the big spike hyzer over the top of the trees. It works great. It's almost funnels right to the basket down there, or you'll hit the tree just short and fall within putting range. So that's the route I choose to play on this hole. The only real trouble is the OB line on the road long. Hole number 16 is 375 feet downhill. All you can see is the band on top of the basket. And as you can tell, the wind is starting to pick up a little bit from left to right. Usually throw a mid-range on this hole, something with a little hyzer, let it flip up. The trouble on this hole is that tree line you can see. If you blast past the hole, you can end up in that tree line, and come spring and summer months, that's really thick in through there, so it can make it a little bit difficult to get out. Sometimes you'll just have to pitch out to get out of those trees. Hole 17, 405 feet. Here we're throwing into a dead 15 to 20 mile an hour headwind, so I'm throwing one of my most overstable enforcers on a hyzer, letting it flip up. Dangers on this hole would be the tree line creek on the right. The creek plays casual, but it's pretty thick wood, so if you do happen to get stuck in there, you're pretty much just pitching out and playing for your bogey. The road is long OB, but it is very, very difficult to get all the way to that road. All right, and finally, hole 18. It plays 530 feet, par 4. There's an OB divider line that plays down the middle of the fairway, and the parking lot is OB. The basket sits on a very unique peninsula style of green, where the OB on the left, the road line, and the tree line is actually not OB, but it's pretty thick in there, and you don't really want to be in there. But to err, you want to err on the right side because it is safe. So I'm usually throwing a mid-range off the tee, then either a forehand into the tree line or a nice turnover putter shot into the green, and hoping to score my birdie 3. All right, well, that's Jones East in Emporia, Kansas. Thanks for watching.